The Panthers have completed their 53-man roster cuts, and Hunter Renfrow is among them. How did we get here? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because next Wednesday it's back. The weekly Wednesday mailbag is here all throughout the regular season and quite possibly, fingers crossed, the playoffs here on Locked On Panthers. What you got to do each and every single week is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council. Don't have Twitter? That's fine. Hit me up on Blue Sky also at Julian Council to get your questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag all throughout the regular season here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. The Panthers have cut their roster down from 72 men all the way down to 53 men, making 19 cuts on Tuesday afternoon. Some of them more surprising than others, and certainly there was a big surprise, but I'm wondering, now thinking back on it, is it really that surprising that this player, and we know who I'm talking about, ended up not making the roster initially? And understand, keyword, initially. The roster is not finalized. We are 12 days away, y'all, from the opener down in Jacksonville. The Panthers will make changes, and quite possibly tomorrow on a Wednesday, when they have revealed what their roster waiver wire claims are, they'll know who is not on the roster anymore, who made the team today, and who they're adding to the roster tomorrow. Potentially, they have the 8th waiver wire claim, so it's possible that they're able to add somebody else who did not make a team elsewhere to the roster here, and then other guys who were released as far as vested veterans who can sign whenever they want, wherever they want. Those guys could also be here in Carolina tomorrow or sometime leading up to that week 1 matchup 12 days away from now down in Jacksonville. So let's go through the 53-man roster that we have here in Carolina at this point in time. And I'm sure you've seen it, but let me just go ahead and go through it for everybody, position by position, going through the guys that were cut today, and then giving you my thoughts on each one of those positions and some of the cuts that were made on Tuesday afternoon. Quarterback, there's really no news. We already saw Jack Plummer and Bryce Perkins both get waived on Monday. Plummer possibly could be back as QB3 on the practice squad. We'll see whether that happens. We'll know more about that later this week. Bryce Perkins will not be back in Carolina by all reports, and also just the way that Dave Canales talked about him last week. Hey, thank you for being here for 3 days playing this preseason game, but yeah, we're going to move on and have somebody else come in and be in that spot if we're going to have a 4th quarterback, or if we're going to take a 3rd quarterback and replace Jack Plummer. Running back, the news of the day there, Raheem Blackshear was waived of an injury settlement. He was injured in that game on Thursday night against Pittsburgh, and I was hoping when I saw that it was not going to be something serious to where he could not find another opportunity elsewhere. He had the most kickoff returns in the NFL in 2024, so he can be a good returner, but Carolina, they wanted to get better at that position. They want to invest in one of the younger guys. And that clearly is Trevor Etienne. You go back to week 2 of the preseason there in Houston, it was very obvious that Trevor Etienne had won that job at that point in time, as he was out there returning kickoffs and punts ahead of Raheem Blackshear, who had those duties week 1 among a lot of other guys also in that game against Cleveland. So Raheem Blackshear, his tenure in Carolina has come to an end. Carolina keeping 3 running backs, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, Trevor Etienne. No surprises there as far as that goes. Wide receiver. We talked about this all offseason, all preseason, all training camp long, whether the Carolina Panthers would keep 7, as deep as this group is and as talented as it is, and also the youth in there. would they keep 7 or would it be cut down to 6? Would anyone be traded? They have indeed kept 7 wide receivers. On Tuesday, they waived Jasim Reed, and then they have released Hunter Renfrow. And that obviously is the biggest story of the day when looking at the 53-man roster right now in Carolina. Hunter Renfrow, who a month ago, I don't think anyone would have seen this being the outcome because it was Hunter Renfrow day, by all accounts. Dabo Swinney was there. Hunter was balling out. He spoke to us after practice about all he's gone through, and he was looking like the former Pro Bowl Hunter Renfrow we saw in Las Vegas. He didn't look like the guy who had lost a ton of weight and who was not healthy the last couple of seasons he played in Las Vegas and last year sitting out. He looked like somebody who was going to be a real threat to make plays on this roster in this offense this season. And here we are now where he's not on the roster. The 7 guys that did make it are Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Tanner McMillan. No surprise there. Those are the top 3 right now. Jalen Coker, Jimmy Horn Jr., Bryson Tremaine, and David Moore. Those are the other 4 who end up beating out Hunter Renfrow. And really, Tremaine's job was secure because he didn't play on Thursday because of general soreness. And I said it back then, saying it again, if that's the excuse, the same one you used for the 8th overall pick in Tanner McMillan, clearly you want the guy around for the long haul. At least that's the plan at that point in time. And right now that appears to absolutely be the plan. So he was maybe the 4th or 5th guy, probably the 5th guy behind Jalen Coker. Yeah, definitely the 5th guy behind Jalen Coker. But after that, it was trying to figure out who else was going to fill out that room, who were going to be the final 2 behind Adam, behind Xavier, behind Tet, behind Jalen, and apparently behind Bryson Tremaine. And you looked at it, David Moore, he was out there on Thursday. Jimmy Horn Jr. wasn't getting an opportunity. And I asked Dave Canales, why is that? He talked about he wanted to give guys like TJ Luther and Colby Hudson and Jacoby George another look. And Hunter Renfrow was also a guy getting a look with Jack Plummer and the second team offense. So maybe that was him just saying that I'm not worried about Jimmy. He's going to be on the team. We invested a 6th-round pick, but I'm trying to figure out among these 5 guys, that being my guy, David Moore, Hunter Renfrow, and then the other 3 undrafted free agents, who am I going to keep around? Who's going to make the final spot? And it turns out that his guy, David Moore, ended up being the final man, I assume, to make the roster here in Carolina at that wide receiver spot ahead of Hunter Renfrow. So how we got here is Hunter was great at the beginning of camp. Then he got hurt. And after that, Jalen Coker started balling out and solidified himself as that number 4 guy at the wide receiver spot on the roster, and also was playing special teams. You look at the rest of them, Bryson Tremaine, while Hunter Renfrow was also out, was making plays against Cleveland in joint practice, made plays against Houston in week 2 when Hunter came back, and was also making plays on special teams. So then he secured his spot on the roster. After that, it came down to David Moore, who Dave Canales says he is reminded of David Moore and Jimmy Horn. Not because of their talent level or anything like that, but just by their work ethic. The quality control coach here in Carolina is Keyshawn Coleman. He is someone who has constantly spent time with Jimmy Horn Jr. throughout the entirety of the offseason and throughout training camp and the preseason, getting him up to speed. Dave Canales did the exact same thing the first 2 years of David Moore's career in Seattle. And when I hear something like that, it makes me feel like it's going to be very difficult, certainly emotional for all these cuts, but in particular emotional for Dave Canales to want to move off of a player such as David Moore, especially when he's wildly respected in the locker room, can help out on special teams as a returner and just as a general special teams ace. And he actually was pretty nice at receiver last year when called upon. So when you take all of that into account and the fact that Hunter Renfrow was injured, when he came back, he was not making the same kind of plays and looking like the guy he looked like prior to the hamstring injury. And I asked him questions and really kind of peppered him with questions. Wasn't trying to do that, but I was genuinely, and you were up there with me on the show on Thursday night, where I was just trying to go through it and think about who's going to be the guy who's going to be left out, because clearly Bryson Tremaine was safe, and that meant they had 5. And Jimmy Horn Jr., is there something to take away from what happened in that game, him not playing until the second half? Maybe it was just to see those guys get an opportunity. David Moore, because of how close Dave Canales is with him. And I had brought up, all right, does that mean that Hunter Renfrow is not going to make the team? And I had asked him that, and he wasn't concerned at all. And it is what it is. And well, what it is Hunter Renfrow's not here in Carolina. And I think in large part because of the injury and the emergence of guys like Julian Council, who I don't really think was ever in jeopardy of losing his job, but in particular, a guy like Bryson Tremaine. And the big thing about it is, too, if you're not going to be among that top three, if you're not going to be Adam Thielen, you're not going to be Xavier Legette, you're not going to be Tyrell McMillan, you have to be able to help out on special teams. Jalen Coker is able to do that now. Jimmy Horn Jr. was brought here to literally do that. Bryson Tremaine can do that. David Moore, he can do that. Hunter Renfrow, he wasn't a part of any of those core special teams. He was out there fielding punts throughout training camp, but we didn't see that in the game. That never materialized. So when it came down to who's going to be the seventh guy, Dave went with the guy he's known for a while and a guy who can play special teams over a guy who hasn't known that long and someone who's not really playing special teams for you and is not among the top three. So if that's the case, then there's not really any room for Hunter Renfrow when you look at your depth chart there at wide receiver, apparently. We'll see how this plays out, but that's how I look at it. It seems like that was the difference between guys like Bryson Tremaine and David Moore, which I think is going to be the one that most people are going to look at and say, how in the world is David Moore here and not Hunter Renfrow? Well, because of the relationship with Dave Canales, relationships matter, special teams, respecting the locker room, what he did last year, all those things checked all the boxes for him and for the organization to keep him around. So Hunter Renfrow no longer here in Carolina, and that certainly is a surprise. But after talking it out, is it all that surprising that this happened? You tell me. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the roster and some other additions or really changes that were made today. We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner, and you can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. If you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time, and it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. With season kickoff on September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many ways to compete. Want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. Want to play instantly with friends? Try the new Draft with Friends mode. Prefer the classics? Get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. No crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Getting back to the initial 53-man roster for the Carolina Panthers heading into 2025. Tight end, they waived tight end Bryce Pierre. That means they have four guys who are going to be on the roster initially: Jatavion Sanders, Tommy Trimble, Mitchell Evans, and James Mitchell making the team. Good to see James Mitchell make it. I actually thought he was pretty impressive all throughout training camp, and that he is a veteran who could help them in that room. Now, Tommy Trimble was back out at practice on Tuesday afternoon. He's been elevated from the PUP list, physically underperformed, so he'll be ready to go to start off the season. It's just one of those things, will he be ready to go week one, or will it be week two? They didn't want to shut him down for the first 4 weeks of the year. So James Mitchell at least is here for cover, but potentially could be somebody that sticks around for the balance of the season. And I feel good about the potential in that tight end room. I think Jatavion Sanders is going to make a big jump this year, like what Tommy Trimble does as a leader and also just as a run blocker. I think Mitchell Evans can be a really nice piece for them down the road and this season as well. And then James Mitchell, again, a vet who I think could help him out. So really good looking tight end group potential wise for Carolina, and also a young group there at that tight end position. Offensive line, they are keeping 9. They waived 4 guys today: Jarrett Kingston, Brandon Walton, Michael Tarquin were waived, and waived with an injury designation, Jatir Carter. Thought that Kingston and Carter were 2 guys who had an opportunity to be the 10th guy, but I think with both those guys not being kept around, now Carter, he got hurt against Houston, then was able to come back and then got hurt again against Pittsburgh. I think probably the same injury. That's why he's not here. I thought Kingston had an opportunity because of his ability to play multiple positions, his versatility, and that apparently was not enough. And I'm thinking, too, that with Damian Lewis, who Dave Canales said last week he thought would be ready for week 1, that made it easier for Carolina to decide they're only going to keep 9, which is, of course, could be Ike Ekwonu at left tackle, Damian Lewis at left guard, Austin Corbett at center, Robert Hunt at right guard, Taylor Moton at right tackle, then Brady Christensen, the 6-man, Josh Nyman, Cade Mays, and Chandler Zavala filling out that room. All 9 of those guys back for a second season in Carolina, so not a single surprise there. Just thought maybe they might add another guy, and of course, Kingston, Walton, Tarquin, Carter, if he gets healthy, all are viable options for the practice squad. Looking over defensively, defensive line, they're keeping 6. They waived Jared Harrison Hunt and Sam Roberts today, released Shai Tuttle, and then placed on IR with a designated to return tag, LeBrian Ray, which now means that Derek Brown, Ashawn Robinson, Bobby Brown III, Turk Wharton, Cam Jackson, and Jaden Crumedy are the 6 defensive linemen here in Carolina heading into the season at this point in time. No surprises with the top 4. It was a kind of a surprise certainly to me that they ended up keeping 6 and not 5. I thought that Cam Jackson being healthy and being the 5th round pick from this year would be fine to make the team because he was able to go out there and play on Thursday. I did not know where Jaden Crumedy stood with his organization and with his coaching staff. And clearly he's someone they still believe in. They invested in him last year with the 6th round pick, and they are keeping that investment in tow for right now when LeBrian Ray is eventually able to come off of that ankle injury, which is not responded to the way they were hoping. We'll see if they end up cutting Jackson or Crumedy. Both those guys have an opportunity over the next 4 weeks to prove why they should be on the roster whenever LeBrian Ray is healthy. And that is also kind of a surprising thing. PFF-wise, he did not grit out well at all, was a part of that atrocious defensive line, and he wasn't like Ashawn Robinson who was making some plays. I'm really surprised that they are keeping him around, but we'll see. They like him, so be interesting to see how that plays out. Outside linebacker, they're also keeping 6. The only person that was cut today was Boogie Basham. He was released. He's a vested veteran, so he could sign back here if he wants to or anywhere else at any time. The 6 guys are DJ Wonnum, Nick Scorton, Prince Uman-Mielen, Patrick Jones II, DJ Johnson, and Thomas Incoom. Incoom, no surprise there. Can really help him out special teams-wise. I thought he had a really nice preseason and training camp. I thought he was going to be the 5th guy. DJ Johnson, that's a Jero Avero, y'all. That's what it is. He has a hip injury. I thought that was going to cost him a spot on the roster. Apparently, that's not the case. Not that serious. He was not able to practice today on Tuesday, but EJ's keeping him around. That was the guy that EJ wanted. That's a guy who was going to be a project at 25 years old. We have not seen anything out of him other than being able to potentially set the edge and stop the run. And when you look at the guys they have right now, Nick Scorton can do that. Pat Jones can do that. Uman-Mielen, maybe not asking them at this point in time in their careers to do that. Same thing with Incoom. So got to have another guy, I suppose, who can stop the run, and that's DJ Johnson. So he's here for another season in Carolina. Inside linebacker, I thought they'd keep 6. They're only keeping 4. They waived Maz Owansa, who's the International Pathways Program player for Carolina. If he signs to the practice squad, that gives them an extra spot. He would not count against the 16 guys that can sign to the practice squad. They released Chris Barnes and John Radigan, both veterans, so they can sign wherever they want, whenever they want. And I would not be surprised, especially Radigan, if he ends up here in Carolina. Barnes feels like to me is going to go somewhere else. That was a vet that was coming over, I thought, to be behind Trojan Wallace and Christian Roseboom. That will not be the case. Instead, it'll be Clyde Sherrillis. And then the undrafted free agent rookie, Bam Martin Scott from South Carolina. And good for him. Here's a funny story. Go back to the beginning of the year. In January, Bam Martin Scott was trying to petition the NCAA for a 7th year of playing college football, which is ridiculous. No one needs to play 7 damn years in college. And here he is in the NFL now, making a roster. So, blessing in disguise. He wanted to go back to South Carolina, highly anticipated season coming up this fall. Instead, he's playing in a National Football League. It took 6 years to get there. I think if you can't do it in 6, you really don't need to have the opportunity to do it in 7. And Bam Martin Scott's now here in Carolina for now. So congratulations to him. It's funny how he wanted to stay in Columbia because I guess if you want to, I mean, hell, it's college. I can understand that. But damn, dude, you're now in the NFL. So congrats to him for that working out the way it has to this point in time. And then cornerback, looking at that, they waived 2 players, Shamar Bartholomew, Michael Reed. No surprises there. J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson, Shaw Smith-Wade. The starters, Corey Thornton behind them. And then Caleb Evans. I think more so with that Shamar Bartholomew losing the job. Gave up a touchdown in all 3 preseason games. Caleb Evans didn't really impress a lot of the times throughout training camp. Didn't really impress all that much against the Steelers, I suppose, on Thursday, but he can help out on special teams. He makes it over Shamar Bartholomew at that cornerback spot. Safety, only 4. They waived Trevion Thomas, who I expect to be on the practice squad. Trevon Merrick, Damani Richardson, Lathan Ransom, Nick Scott. Those are the 4. Then special teams, already know this one. Sam Martin, the punter, Ryan Fitzgerald, the rookie kicker from Florida State, and then J.J. Jansen back once again here in Carolina. Those are the 53 men who have initially made the roster here for your Panthers. One guy who's still here, who we wondered whether he would be here this time on Tuesday, is Adam Thielen. Why has a trade not worked out? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, build a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Since Friday afternoon, when Adam Schefter put out a report that the Minnesota Vikings are interested in bringing back the hometown hero Adam Thielen for his final year, likely in the NFL, we have been on trade watch here in Carolina, waiting to see whether the Vikings would give the Panthers an offer they were willing to accept to send a veteran back home and to lean into the youth movement at that wide receiver room and really across the roster here in Carolina heading into 2025. And here we sit on Thursday evening and, well, Tuesday evening, and nothing has happened. Adam Thielen is still a Carolina Panther, went to practice today, was smiling, and does not appear to be somebody who is headed back home to Minnesota. And I had wondered throughout this entire process if it would make sense for Adam and also for the Vikings. I get that Minnesota's concerned about Jordan Addison's suspension, some of the injuries that they have there, and they want to add somebody to help out their second year, but really rookie, first year starting quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, and Adam Thielen already knows the offense. It would make perfect sense for them to go back to Minnesota where he has a home there. It's where he's from. Would be a very easy transition for him and for Minnesota. But like a month into it, he would take a back seat to Jordan Addison and quite possibly to some other guys out there on the roster in that wide receiver room. So I wondered, like, did it make sense for Minnesota to give up a lot? And they weren't going to give up a ton, but would it make sense for them to really give up assets for a guy that's going to truly be a key figure of that offense for like a month out of the season? And for Adam, where right now in Carolina, he's a part of the top 3, and you can guess which spot he's at. Is he number 1? Is he number 2, number 3 at this point in time? I don't know, but he's a part of the top 3 in Carolina, and he's already settled here, already getting good money here, wouldn't have to take any sort of pay cut, which may be something the Minnesota Vikings would ask him to do. Would he want to go back to that situation? Now, apparently, reports say that he is interested in going back home, and who wouldn't? He's from Minnesota. It's clearly going to be his last season. And why not go try and chase the Lombardi in that brass ring one last time with the hometown team and go help him out? And then also pave the way for the young guys. But for Carolina, their perspective, Adam Thielen was a 1,000-yard receiver a couple years ago, got banged up last year, but still was their top receiver, and is somebody who they gave more money to this offseason, and someone they still think can help out their young quarterback in Bryce Young and the rest of the young wide receiver course. So they're just not going to give him away for nothing at all. And when we talked about this yesterday, Bill Barnwell was talking about a 6th-round pick coming up in 2026, then a 7th-round pick the year after that. That's what Panthers were able to get from Arizona for Robbie Anderson. And Robbie Anderson it can't play. He's not in the league right now. Adam Thielen can play. So you just don't give away somebody who's been a good player for you just because Minnesota wants to bring him back home and it's a nice feel-good story to close out his career. Carolina's trying to win games too. They're fighting against the Vikings to be a playoff team. Now, they're not in the same division, but they're in the same conference. And I don't know who the favorite is right now in the NFC North. I think Green Bay is going to certainly have a great chance. We'll see what J.J. McCarthy is, really who he is, and whether he's going to be good enough for Kevin O'Connell in that offense for them to be right back in position to contend and win the division. And then Detroit's probably not going anywhere. So they're going to be fighting for a potential wild card against this same Vikings team. So why give away, if it's a 6th or 7th round pick, a guy who can help you just to go help them for a couple of weeks and then have them relegate him down the roster? Now, that could play out the same way in Carolina. The hope is that Tedero, McMillan, and Xavier Legette end up being the number 1 and 2 here in Carolina this season. And Adam Thielen becomes that number 3 guy and that his role diminishes across the season. Now, you want him to still be a key piece of the offense, but you want to see your younger guys step up and be those dudes. Now, if it doesn't happen, you still have Adam Thielen. In Minnesota, they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. They'll be fine if Adam does not, if Adam doesn't play well or is not a big part of their offense. For Carolina, there's still plenty of unknowns about this wide receiver core to where, is this the time that you want to make this deal? At the deadline, okay, sure. We have about 2 months to have seen what they have in McMillan, what they have in Legette, what they have in Jalen Coker and the rest of this group. But right now, too many question marks, especially for a 6th or 7th round pick. And when you look at what Minnesota has, they've been making a lot of deals recently of picks that they may be interested in giving up. They have a 5th rounder, 2 of them. They have a 6th rounder and 2 7ths. The 4th round pick that would be, I'm sure, of interest to Carolina is a compensatory pick for losing Daniel Jones, which is crazy. They can't trade that. They have 2 3rd round picks. One of them is also a comp pick for losing Sam Darnold. That one can't be traded. And there's another 5th round pick that they got for losing Cam Robinson. They can't trade comp picks, man. So at this point in time, they only have so many tradable assets for 2026, and it appears that they're not willing to give up something that Carolina is willing to take in order for them to send Adam Thielen back home. So until there's an agreeable offer, Adam Thielen will be a Carolina Panther. And I'm not mad at that at all. I think that makes sense. I think it's a little risky. Sometimes he's going to make the risk and be like the Packers a couple of years ago and go with the youth. But still, would like to keep Adam around for a little bit, figure out what they have in McMillan and what they have truly in Legette and Coker before making that decision. So that's where I'm at. And I think that's obviously where Carolina's at this point in time, as far as no trade for Adam Thielen, as he is on the initial 53-man roster. It's a fluid situation. Could certainly change. Again, 12 days away from kickoff there in Jacksonville. And like KJ Osborne, by the way, was number 3 in Minnesota, and he's available. He got released today. So that's a veteran who knows the scheme. They can go get him and give up nothing. So I'm not saying that saga's over. Could still be in play. But we'll see if Minnesota is willing to give Carolina what they are looking for and what they want. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I'll be back on Wednesday next week answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow on Wednesday as we'll look to see if Carolina put any waiver claims, if they got any of those waiver claims accepted, and who are the guys who ended up being cut because of said waiver claims, and take a look more at the roster heading into 2025. All that more on Wednesday here on Locked On Panthers.